Transform yourself until victory comes. Introduction. The journey begins with you. Victory is not a destination that suddenly appears on your horizon. It is not handed to you by circumstance, luck, or the benevolence of others. Victory is the natural consequence of transformation, the inevitable result of becoming someone capable of achieving what you desire. This book exists because too many people are waiting for their lives to change while refusing to change themselves. They seek external solutions to internal problems, looking everywhere except the one place where real power resides, within. The premise of this book is simple but profound. When you focus on transforming yourself, victory becomes not just possible, but inevitable. This is not about positive thinking or wishful manifestation. This is about the hard, honest work of personal evolution. It's about identifying who you are today, deciding who you need to become, and doing the difficult work of bridging that gap. Throughout my years of studying human potential and working with people from all walks of life, I have observed a consistent pattern. Those who achieve remarkable success, whether in business, relationships, health, or personal fulfillment, share a common trait. They understand that their external circumstances are reflections of their internal state. They recognize that before they can have what they want, they must become who they need to be.
This book is divided into 10 chapters, each focusing on a crucial aspect of personal transformation. We'll explore the psychology of change, the power of discipline, the necessity of failure, and the art of sustained growth. Each chapter contains not just theory, but practical strategies you can implement immediately, because transformation isn't about understanding concepts, it's about taking action. You're holding this book because something inside you recognizes the truth. Your current self, with your current habits, beliefs, and patterns, has brought you to where you are today. To go somewhere different, you must become someone different. This isn't a criticism, it's an opportunity. The person you are right now is the foundation upon which you'll build the person you're becoming. The journey of transformation is not easy. It requires confronting uncomfortable truths, releasing comfortable lies, and doing the work even when motivation fades. But here's what I can promise you. Every step you take toward becoming your best self brings you closer to the victory you seek. Not because the universe rewards effort, but because transformation changes you into someone capable of creating, recognizing, and seizing opportunities that your former self would have missed or squandered. As you read this book, I encourage you to do more than consume information. Engage with each chapter actively. Reflect on how the principles apply to your life. Implement the strategies, even imperfectly, because transformation doesn't happen in the reading, it happens in the doing. Your victory awaits, but it waits on the other side of your transformation. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. The Mirror Test. Confronting who you really are. Before you can transform, you must first see yourself clearly. This is perhaps the most difficult step in any journey of personal growth, because human beings have an extraordinary capacity for self-deception. We tell ourselves stories about who we are, why we behave as we do, and why our circumstances are beyond our control. These narratives protect our ego, but imprison our potential. The mirror test is simple in concept, but challenging in execution. You must look at your life objectively and accept full responsibility for where you are, not partial responsibility, not responsibility except for the things that weren't your fault. Total responsibility. This doesn't mean that external factors haven't influenced your path. They certainly have.
but it means recognizing that how you respond to those factors is entirely within your control, and those responses have shaped your reality. Consider your current situation, your relationships, your career, your health, your financial state, your emotional well-being. These are not random occurrences. They are the accumulated results of thousands of decisions, actions, and habits. Some of those decisions were conscious and deliberate. Many were unconscious and automatic. But all of them were yours. This realization can feel overwhelming or even depressing at first. If you're responsible for where you are and you're not where you want to be, doesn't that mean you've failed? No, it means you're human. It means you've been operating with incomplete information, limited awareness, or ineffective strategies. The good news is that if your choices brought you here, different choices can take you somewhere else.
The mirror test requires brutal honesty. You must identify the gaps between who you claim to be and who you actually are. Do you say you value health while eating poorly and avoiding exercise? Do you claim to prioritize your family while spending your free time on distractions? Do you consider yourself ambitious while taking the path of least resistance? These contradictions aren't character flaws. They're simply truths you haven't yet confronted. One powerful exercise is to write down your core values, the principles you believe should guide your life. Then, track your behavior for a week. How do you actually spend your time, your money, your energy? The alignment or misalignment between your stated values and your actual behavior reveals who you really are, not who you wish to be. Many people resist this level of honesty because it's painful. It's easier to blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck than to acknowledge our own role in creating our reality. But this blame, while comforting, is also disempowering. When you blame external factors, you give them your power. When you accept responsibility, you reclaim it.
Let's be clear about what accepting responsibility means and doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that everything that happened to you was your fault. Trauma, injustice, and misfortune are real, and they affect people differently. What it means is that regardless of what happened, you get to choose what you do next. Your past may have shaped you, but it doesn't have to define you. The mirror test also involves examining your beliefs about yourself and the world. Many of us carry limiting beliefs we've never questioned. I'm not good with money. I'm just not a creative person. Success is for other people, not people like me. These beliefs feel like truths, but they're actually stories, and stories can be rewritten. Where did these beliefs come from? Often they originated in childhood experiences, failures we've internalized, or messages we received from authority figures. A teacher's careless comment, a parent's projection of their own fears, a single failure we allowed to define our identity. These moments can create beliefs that shape our behavior for decades. To pass the mirror test, you must identify these limiting beliefs and challenge them. Ask yourself, is this belief actually true, or does it just feel true because I've believed it for so long? What evidence contradicts this belief? What would be possible if I didn't hold this belief? This questioning doesn't instantly eliminate limiting beliefs, but it weakens their grip and opens space for new, empowering beliefs to take root.
Another critical aspect of the mirror test is examining your relationships. The people you spend time with profoundly influence your thoughts, behaviors, and possibilities. Are your closest relationships lifting you up or holding you back? This isn't about judging others as good or bad. It's about honestly assessing whether your social circle supports your growth or reinforces patterns you're trying to change. Sometimes the mirror test reveals that we've surrounded ourselves with people who enable our worst habits or validate our excuses. This might be because we're comfortable with them, because they don't challenge us, or because being around people who are also stuck makes us feel better about our own stagnation. Recognizing this pattern is uncomfortable but necessary. The mirror test is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice of self-awareness and honesty. As you grow and change, new blind spots will emerge. New contradictions will appear between who you're becoming and who you currently are. The key is developing the habit of regular self-examination without judgment. You're not trying to prove you're terrible. You're trying to see clearly so you can act effectively. One of the most powerful outcomes of the mirror test is the end of victimhood. When you stop blaming and start owning, you step into your power. You may not control what happens to you, but you absolutely control what you make of it. This shift from victim to creator is the foundation of all transformation. As you complete your mirror test, you may feel exposed and vulnerable. That's exactly right. You've removed the comfortable layers of self-deception and are seeing yourself as you truly are. This clarity, while uncomfortable, is the gift that makes all growth possible. You cannot fix problems you won't acknowledge. You cannot change behaviors you refuse to see. The mirror test gives you the raw material of transformation, the truth about who you are right now. Remember, the purpose of this honesty isn't to fuel self-criticism or shame. It's to establish a baseline. You wouldn't begin a journey without knowing your starting point. The mirror test reveals where you're starting from, so you can chart a course to where you want to go. And here's the beautiful truth. No matter what the mirror shows you today, transformation is possible. The fact that you're willing to look, really look, means you're already beginning to change.
Chapter 2. The Blueprint. Designing Your Transformed Self. Now that you've confronted who you are, it's time to design who you're becoming. Transformation without direction is just change. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, always random. To transform yourself until victory comes, you need a clear vision of your destination. This chapter is about creating a detailed blueprint of your transformed self. Many people skip this step, thinking they know what they want. They want to be successful, happy, healthy, or wealthy. But these are vague aspirations, not blueprints. A blueprint is specific, detailed, and actionable. It describes not just what you want to have, but who you need to become to have it. Start by envisioning your transformed self 5 years from now. Not what you'll have achieved, but who you'll be as a person. What does this future version of you think about? How do they spend their time? What habits do they maintain? How do they respond to challenges? What principles guide their decisions? The more specific you can be, the more useful your blueprint becomes. This exercise requires imagination, but it shouldn't be fantasy. Your transformed self must be an authentic extension of who you are. Your core values, your natural strengths, your genuine interests. Trying to become someone fundamentally incompatible with your nature is a recipe for misery, not victory. The goal is to become the best version of yourself, not a poor imitation of someone else. One helpful framework is to design your transformed self across several key dimensions: physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual. In each area, ask yourself, what does excellence look like for me? Not perfection, not what looks good on social media, but genuine excellence aligned with your values and goals. Physically, your transformed self might maintain consistent exercise, fuel their body with intention, get adequate sleep, and manage stress effectively. These aren't just fitness goals, they're identity markers. Your transformed self is someone for whom these behaviors are natural expressions of who they are, not forced obligations. Mentally, your transformed self might be a continuous learner, someone who reads regularly, thinks critically, and seeks to understand rather than just consume information. They might practice focus and deep work, resist distraction, and develop genuine expertise in their field. They see their mind as a tool to be sharpened, not just a vessel to be filled.
Emotionally, your transformed self likely has developed emotional intelligence and resilience. They don't suppress emotions, but also don't let emotions control their decisions. They've learned to process difficult feelings, maintain perspective during challenges, and recover quickly from setbacks. They're comfortable with discomfort because they know growth lives there. Socially, your transformed self has cultivated meaningful relationships and set healthy boundaries. They've learned to say no without guilt and yes with enthusiasm. They invest in relationships that matter and gracefully distance themselves from those that drain them. They understand that who you surround yourself with shapes who you become. Spiritually, and this doesn't necessarily mean religiously, your transformed self has connected with something larger than themselves. This might be a sense of purpose, a commitment to contribution, or a philosophy that provides meaning. They're not just pursuing success for its own sake, but because it enables them to make an impact that matters to them. With these dimensions outlined, the next step is identifying the gap between who you are now and who you're becoming. This isn't about creating a list of everything wrong with you. Remember, the mirror test already provided that clarity. This is about specifically identifying what must change. If your transformed self exercises 5 times per week and you currently exercise never, that's a gap. If your transformed self reads 50 books annually and you read 1, that's a gap. These gaps can feel overwhelming, which is why the next part of the blueprint is crucial: identifying the keystone habits that will close multiple gaps simultaneously. A keystone habit is a behavior that naturally triggers other positive behaviors. For many people, consistent exercise is a keystone habit. It improves sleep, increases energy, enhances mood, and often leads to better eating habits. What are the keystone habits for your transformation? Perhaps it's a morning routine that sets your day's tone. Maybe it's a weekly planning session that brings clarity and direction. It could be a daily reading habit that expands your knowledge and perspective. Identify the 2 or 3 habits that, if established, would create momentum across all areas of your life. Your blueprint should also include role models and mentors, people who embody aspects of your transformed self. These don't have to be people you know personally. They might be historical figures, authors, entrepreneurs, artists, or leaders whose qualities you admire. Study them. How do they think? What principles guide them? What patterns characterize their behavior? Your transformed self is unique to you, but you don't have to invent every aspect from scratch.
An often overlooked element of the blueprint is identifying what you must let go of. Transformation isn't just about adding positive qualities. It's about removing what no longer serves you. Toxic relationships, time-wasting habits, limiting beliefs, unnecessary commitments. Your blueprint should clearly identify what needs to be released to make room for what's coming. This can be the most difficult part of the blueprint because letting go often involves short-term discomfort. It's hard to end a friendship that's become one-sided. It's challenging to quit activities you've identified with for years, even if they're no longer aligned with who you're becoming. It's painful to release comforting beliefs that have protected your ego but limited your growth. Yet transformation requires creating space, and space is created by letting go. One powerful tool for solidifying your blueprint is writing a narrative description of a day in the life of your transformed self. Walk through an entire day, from waking up to going to sleep. What does your morning routine look like? How do you approach work? How do you interact with others? What do you do during downtime? How do you handle a challenge that arises? This narrative makes your blueprint tangible and reveals details you might otherwise miss. Your blueprint should also address your environment. Your transformed self likely lives and works in spaces that support their goals and values. What does your physical environment look like? Is it organized or chaotic? Minimal or cluttered? What's on your walls? What's in your refrigerator? Environment shapes behavior more than most people realize, so designing your transformed environment is part of designing your transformed self.
Finally, your blueprint must be written down. Research consistently shows that people who write down their goals and plans are significantly more likely to achieve them than those who don't. But beyond the psychological benefits, writing forces clarity. Vague ideas in your head become specific commitments on paper. Your blueprint should be a document you can return to regularly to remind yourself of where you're headed. Remember, this blueprint isn't set in stone. As you grow and learn, your vision may evolve. That's not failure, that's wisdom. The blueprint is a living document that guides your transformation but doesn't imprison it. Review it quarterly. Adjust it as needed, but don't abandon it just because the work gets hard or the timeline stretches longer than expected. Creating your blueprint takes time and thought, but it's time incredibly well spent. Without a clear destination, you'll wander in circles, perhaps working hard, but not necessarily moving forward. With a detailed blueprint, every decision becomes simpler. Does this move me toward my transformed self or away from it? This clarity is the compass that guides you through the challenging terrain of transformation, keeping you oriented toward victory even when the path is unclear.
Chapter 3. The Death of Motivation. Building Systems That Work. One of the most dangerous myths about transformation is that motivated people succeed while unmotivated people fail. This belief leads countless individuals to wait for motivation to strike before taking action, and then to feel like failures when that motivation inevitably fades. The truth is that motivation is unreliable, emotion-driven, and temporary. Successful transformation doesn't depend on feeling motivated. It depends on building systems that work regardless of how you feel. Think about the last time you felt truly motivated to change something. Maybe you watched an inspiring video, read a powerful book, or had a wake-up call that made you commit to transformation. In that moment, you felt capable of anything. You made ambitious plans and bold promises to yourself. And then, a few days or weeks later, that motivation disappeared. The alarm went off early and you hit snooze. The healthy meal seemed less appealing than the convenient option. The project you were excited about suddenly felt tedious. What happened? Nothing happened. This is the natural cycle of motivation. It's a feeling, and feelings change. Basing your transformation on motivation is like building a house on sand. It might stand for a while, but it won't withstand the storms. To transform yourself until victory comes, you need a foundation of systems, not feelings.
A system is a repeatable process that produces consistent results. It's not dependent on willpower, motivation, or circumstance. It's simply what you do, regardless of how you feel. Systems remove the need to make decisions in the moment, which is crucial because decision fatigue is real, and willpower.
Chapter 4. Failure as Fuel. Reframing Setbacks for Growth. Most people treat failure like a disease, something to be avoided at all costs, hidden when it occurs, and never discussed in polite company. They see setbacks as proof of inadequacy, as confirmation that they should quit, as signals that the universe is telling them they're not meant for success. This mindset is precisely what separates those who transform from those who remain trapped in cycles of attempted change and eventual surrender. The uncomfortable truth is this: failure is not the opposite of success, it's the price of admission. Every person who has achieved meaningful transformation has a graveyard of failures behind them, some small, some catastrophic, all instructive. The difference between those who eventually win and those who perpetually restart lies not in their ability to avoid failure, but in their capacity to metabolize it into forward momentum. Think about how a child learns to walk. They don't stand up on their first attempt and stroll confidently across the room. They fall, repeatedly, dozens, sometimes hundreds of times. They faceplant into carpet, tumble backward onto padded diapers, lose their balance and grab frantically at furniture. And yet, no parent watches this process and thinks, well, clearly walking isn't for my child. No toddler falls for the 15th time and concludes, I guess I'm just not a walking person. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, we learn to fear failure. We internalize the idea that setbacks are shameful, that they reveal fundamental flaws in our character or capabilities. We develop elaborate defense mechanisms, procrastination, perfectionism, excuse-making, all designed to protect us from the sting of failure. In doing so, we also protect ourselves from the possibility of transformation. The anatomy of productive failure. Not all failures are equal. There's a profound difference between failing forward and failing in circles. Failing forward means extracting maximum learning from each setback, adjusting your approach, and moving closer to your goal even through losses. Failing in circles means repeating the same mistakes while expecting different results, learning nothing, and remaining fundamentally unchanged. Productive failure has three essential components. First, it provides specific feedback. A productive failure tells you exactly what didn't work. It's not a vague sense of disappointment, but a clear signal. This approach, at this time, under these conditions, produced this undesired result. Second, it generates actionable insights. A productive failure shows you what to adjust, what to try next, what to avoid in the future. Third, it builds resilience. Each productive failure strengthens your capacity to handle discomfort, uncertainty, and temporary defeat. When you attempt to wake up at 5 a.m. but hit snooze 6 times and finally rise at 7:30, that's feedback. The productive response isn't self-flagellation or abandoning the goal entirely. It's analysis. What time did I actually fall asleep? How many hours of sleep did I get? Did I place my alarm across the room? Did I have a compelling reason to get up, or was I just forcing an arbitrary goal onto my life? Did I attempt too dramatic a change too quickly? Each of these questions transforms a simple failure into a data point. String enough data points together and you have a map. The map shows you the territory between your current self and your transformed self. Failure illuminates the obstacles, the dead ends, the difficult terrain. Without it, you're navigating blind. When you approach failure with curiosity, you activate exploration responses. Your brain interprets the failure as interesting data, triggering analysis, creativity, and engagement. This state facilitates learning. In curiosity mode, your thinking expands. You consider multiple perspectives, and you remain open to solutions you haven't yet imagined. The difference in outcomes is staggering. The person who judges themselves stays stuck in shame spirals, avoiding the very actions that would lead to transformation. The person who stays curious treats each failure as an experiment,
adjusting variables, and trying again. One person experiences failure as an identity statement. I am a failure. The other experiences it as a temporary event. That approach failed. This isn't about feeling good about failure. You don't have to celebrate your setbacks or pretend they don't sting. The goal isn't to be delusional about your performance. The goal is to be useful to yourself. Judgment isn't useful. It doesn't improve future performance. It doesn't reveal better strategies. It just feels bad and makes you less likely to try again. Curiosity, meanwhile, is intensely practical. It generates the insights that actually improve your odds next time.
The failure audit. Mining your setbacks for gold. Most people experience failure and immediately try to forget about it, to move past it as quickly as possible. This is a catastrophic waste of valuable information. Every failure contains seeds of future success, but only if you're willing to examine it closely enough to find them. Implement a failure audit practice. When something doesn't go according to plan, resist the urge to immediately distract yourself or rationalize away the experience. Instead, within 24 hours, sit down and conduct a structured review. This isn't about dwelling on the negative or beating yourself up. It's about becoming a skilled diagnostician of your own behavior. Ask yourself these questions. What specifically happened? Not your interpretation, not your feelings about it, but the objective sequence of events. What was I trying to accomplish? What did I actually do? What was the gap between intention and execution? What factors contributed to this outcome? Which were within my control and which weren't? What was I thinking and feeling immediately before the failure occurred? What do I now know that I didn't know before this experience? If I could go back, what would I do differently? What will I do differently next time? This process transforms raw failure into refined insight. You begin to notice patterns. Maybe you consistently fail when you're tired, hungry, or stressed. Maybe you succeed when you have clear deadlines and accountability, but flounder with open-ended goals. Maybe you excel at starting, but struggle with persistence, or vice versa. These patterns are gold. They tell you where to shore up your systems, where to add support, where to adjust your approach. Consider keeping a failure log, a private document where you record setbacks and the lessons extracted from them. Review it monthly. You'll be surprised how often you face the same challenge multiple times before the lesson finally sticks. You'll also be surprised months later at how failures that felt devastating at the time led directly to breakthroughs you couldn't have achieved any other way.
The resilience compound. Building failure tolerance. Resilience isn't something you have or don't have. It's something you build, rep by rep, setback by setback. Each time you fail and continue anyway, you're making a deposit in your resilience account. Each time you fail and quit, you're making a withdrawal. Think of failure tolerance like physical tolerance for cold water. The first time you step into a cold shower, it's shocking, uncomfortable, nearly intolerable. Your body screams at you to get out. But if you stay in, breathe through it, and do it again the next day, something remarkable happens. The cold doesn't get warmer, but your capacity to handle it increases. After a few weeks, what once felt impossible becomes merely uncomfortable. After a few months, it might even become invigorating. Failure works the same way. Your first significant setback in your transformation journey might feel crushing. You might question everything, want to quit, spiral into doubt. But if you acknowledge the failure, extract the lesson, and try again, you're building capacity. The next failure won't hurt quite as much. You'll recover faster.
You'll know from experience that setbacks are temporary and surmountable. This is why people who have already achieved one significant transformation find subsequent transformations easier. It's not that they've unlocked some secret formula. It's that they've built failure tolerance. They know what it feels like to be in the messy middle of change, when nothing seems to be working and victory feels impossibly distant. They know that feeling isn't predictive. They know to keep going anyway.
You can accelerate this process by deliberately exposing yourself to low-stakes failures. Try things you're likely to fail at initially. Take a class in something you've never done before. Attempt a physical challenge slightly beyond your current capacity. Put yourself in situations where you'll be awkward, incompetent, or unsuccessful. Not to torture yourself, but to practice staying in the discomfort, learning from it, and trying again. The victory in every defeat. Here's what nobody tells you about transformation. The moment of victory often feels anticlimactic. The arrival at your goal might be satisfying, but it's rarely the most meaningful part of the journey. The meaning is built in the accumulation of small victories hidden inside apparent defeats. Every time you fail and choose to view it as feedback rather than a referendum on your worth, you win. Every time you extract a lesson from a setback and implement it, you win. Every time you face uncertainty and keep going anyway, you win. These victories don't make headlines. They don't photograph well for social media. They happen in the quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts, deciding whether to try again or give up.
The transformed version of yourself, the one waiting on the other side of your current challenges, isn't someone who never fails. That person doesn't exist. The transformed you is someone who has failed extensively and developed the capacity to transform those failures into wisdom, those setbacks into strength, those defeats into determination. This is why failure is fuel. Not because it feels good or because you should seek it out unnecessarily, but because it's the raw material from which transformation is forged. Every successful person you admire has a private history of failure that would dwarf your worst moments. The difference is they learn to extract energy from those experiences rather than being depleted by them. Your failures don't define you. Your response to failure defines you. And that response is entirely within your control. You can choose judgment or curiosity. You can choose shame or analysis. You can choose to quit or to adjust and continue. These choices, made consistently over time, determine whether your transformation journey ends in victory or resignation. The path to becoming your transformed self is paved with failures. Stop trying to avoid them. Stop being surprised when they occur. Stop treating them as aberrations in an otherwise smooth journey. They are the journey. Your job isn't to fail less. It's to fail better, learn faster, and keep moving forward despite the inevitable setbacks.
Transformation doesn't come to those who never fall. It comes to those who fall. Get up, learn from the fall, and take the next step anyway. That's the advantage that failure gives you, if you're brave enough to use it. Chapter 5. The Discipline Advantage. Mastering Self-Control. Discipline has a marketing problem. When most people hear the word, they picture a grim-faced drill sergeant, joyless rigidity, or a life stripped of spontaneity and pleasure. They imagine white-knuckling their way through miserable tasks, denying themselves everything they enjoy, and living in a state of perpetual self-denial.
This caricature of discipline has convinced millions of people that they don't want it, that it's incompatible with happiness, that it's somehow opposed to freedom. This misconception might be the most expensive mistake you'll ever make. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Discipline isn't the opposite of freedom. Discipline is what makes freedom possible. The undisciplined person is a slave to their impulses, their moods, their circumstances. They're blown by every wind of emotion, derailed by every distraction, controlled by forces they don't even recognize. The disciplined person chooses their responses, directs their energy, and shapes their reality. One is a passenger, the other is the driver.
Every meaningful transformation requires crossing a desert. There's a period, sometimes days, sometimes months, where the old comfort is gone, but the new reward hasn't materialized yet. You're eating better, but haven't lost the weight. You're studying, but haven't mastered the skill. You're building, but haven't seen the results. This is the discipline gap, and it's where most transformations die. Motivation gets you to the edge of the desert. Discipline gets you across it. The discipline equation is capacity minus demand. Most people approach discipline backwards. They try to increase their willpower as if self-control were a muscle that just needs more training. They set ambitious goals that require heroic levels of restraint and wonder why they consistently fall short. They blame their character, their genetics, their upbringing, anything except the flawed framework they're operating within. Discipline isn't primarily about willpower. It's about design. Specifically, it's about the relationship between your capacity for self-control and the demands placed upon it. Your discipline equation looks like this: available self-control minus required self-control equals your discipline surplus or deficit. When the demands on your self-control exceed your capacity to provide it, you experience discipline failure. You eat the food you swore you wouldn't eat. You skip the workout you committed to completing. You scroll social media instead of doing the work that matters. This isn't because you're weak, it's because you're operating with a discipline deficit. The implications are profound. If you want to increase your effective discipline, you have two levers: increase your capacity or decrease the demand. Most people focus exclusively on the first while ignoring the second, which is why they struggle. Increasing capacity is hard and slow. Decreasing demand can be immediate and dramatic. Consider someone trying to eat healthier while keeping their kitchen stocked with junk food. Every time they walk past the pantry, they're making a demand on their self-control. Resist the chips, ignore the cookies, don't grab the candy. By evening, after dozens of these micro-decisions, their self-control is depleted. The inevitable happens. Now consider the same person who simply removes junk food from their home. They've eliminated dozens of daily demands on their self-control without requiring any increase in capacity. This is discipline through design. The architecture of self-control. Your environment is either demanding discipline from you or providing it to you. Most people live in environments that constantly drain their self-control reserves, then wonder why they can't maintain discipline when it matters most. They're trying to be disciplined in a system designed to make discipline difficult. Architect your environment to minimize unnecessary demands on self-control. If you want to read more, place books in every room and remove your TV or move it to a less accessible location. If you want to exercise consistently, lay out your workout clothes the night before or sleep in them. If you want to focus on deep work, delete social media apps from your phone rather than relying on willpower to not open them.
This isn't cheating. It's strategic. Professional athletes don't prove their discipline by training in chaotic environments filled with distractions. They create controlled environments optimized for performance. You should do the same.
Every decision you can make once to eliminate recurring demands on self-control is a victory multiplier. The same principle applies to your schedule. Discipline is significantly easier when it's routine rather than decision. The person who exercises when they feel like it is making a disciplined demand multiple times per week. Should I work out today? What time? What will I do? Each question depletes self-control. The person who exercises every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 a.m. has eliminated the decision entirely. The discipline happened once when they created the routine. Now they're just executing. Build decision-making routines for your high-priority activities. Don't decide whether to do them. Decide when, where, and how. Then let the routine carry you. Save your discipline for the inevitable moments when the routine is challenged, not for the routine itself. The Discipline Bank. Understanding your reserves. Self-control is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day. This isn't weakness, it's biology. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, every distraction you ignore draws from the same pool of mental energy. By evening, that pool is often nearly empty, which is why your discipline fails most often at night. Understanding this changes everything. If you know your discipline is strongest in the morning and weakest at night, you schedule accordingly. Important work happens in the morning. Difficult conversations happen in the morning. Exercise happens in the morning. By evening, you're doing low-stakes activities that don't require significant self-control. You also protect your discipline reserves by eliminating low-value expenditures. Decision fatigue is real. Choosing what to wear, what to eat, what to watch, which task to do first, these mundane decisions accumulate into significant self-control drain. This is why successful people often wear the same thing every day, eat the same breakfast, follow the same morning routine. They're not boring, they're strategic. They're preserving self-control for decisions that matter. Audit your typical day for unnecessary discipline expenditures. How many trivial decisions are you making? How many low-stakes temptations are you resisting? How many pointless distractions are you ignoring? Each one is a withdrawal from your discipline bank. Automate, eliminate, or systematize as many as possible.
Your discipline bank also has deposits. Sleep is the most powerful one. A well-rested person has dramatically more self-control capacity than an exhausted one. If you're trying to maintain discipline while chronically sleep-deprived, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back. Nutrition matters too. Blood sugar crashes correspond with discipline crashes. Exercise, paradoxically, increases self-control capacity rather than depleting it. Stress management, meaningful relationships, and purpose all make deposits. The person who neglects these fundamentals and then tries to force discipline through sheer willpower is building on sand. The person who optimizes these fundamentals and then applies discipline to what remains is building on bedrock. The discipline motivation dance. Motivation is a feeling. Discipline is a practice. Motivation comes and goes like weather. Discipline remains like architecture. Waiting for motivation to take disciplined action is like waiting to feel like going to work before you go. Some days you will, most days you won't, but the job still needs doing. This doesn't mean motivation is useless. It means motivation and discipline serve different functions. Motivation initiates. Discipline sustains. Motivation gets you excited about the transformation. Discipline actually transforms you. Motivation is the spark. Discipline is the fuel that keeps the fire burning after the spark fades. The problem is that we've been sold a lie, that motivated people are disciplined people. Watch any transformation story on social media and you'll see highlight reels of people crushing workouts, preparing perfect meals, and radiating enthusiasm. What they don't see are the dozens of days where they felt terrible, wanted to quit, had no motivation whatsoever, and did the work anyway.
That's the discipline part, and it's invisible because it's not exciting to watch.
Understand this: you will not feel motivated most of the time. The transformed version of yourself wasn't created by motivated action on inspired days. It was created by disciplined action on ordinary days, difficult days, days when every fiber of your being wanted to stay in bed or give up or take the easy path. Those are the days that matter most. Build a protocol for unmotivated action. What's the minimum viable version of your important tasks? On days when you can't do the full workout, what's the 10-minute version? On days when you can't write for an hour, what's the 15-minute version? On days when you can't follow your meal plan perfectly, what's the good enough version? Having these predetermined minimums prevents all or nothing thinking from sabotaging your discipline. The discipline motivation dance works like this. Take disciplined action despite lack of motivation, and motivation often appears mid-task. Tell yourself you'll just do 10 minutes, and by minute 3, you're engaged. Tell yourself you'll just do 1 set, and by the end, you're doing 4. This is the secret that disciplined people know. You don't need motivation to start. You need discipline to start, and starting often generates motivation. The compound effect of small disciplines. Discipline doesn't typically produce dramatic results immediately. This is why people abandon it. They expect their discipline to be rewarded quickly and proportionally. They're disciplined for 2 weeks and wonder why they're not transformed. They maintain their routine for a month and question whether it's working. Understand this: you will not feel motivated most of the time. The transformed version of yourself wasn't created by motivated action on inspired days. It was created by disciplined action on ordinary days, difficult days, days when every fiber of your being wanted to stay in bed or give up or take the easy path. Those are the days that matter most. Build a protocol for unmotivated action. What's the minimum viable version of your important tasks? On days when you can't do the full workout, what's the 10-minute version? On days when you can't write for an hour, what's the 15-minute version? On days when you can't follow your meal plan perfectly, what's the good enough version? Having these predetermined minimums prevents all or nothing thinking from sabotaging your discipline. The discipline motivation dance works like this. Take disciplined action despite lack of motivation, and motivation often appears mid-task. Tell yourself you'll just do 10 minutes, and by minute 3, you're engaged. Tell yourself you'll just do 1 set, and by the end, you're doing 4. This is the secret that disciplined people know. You don't need motivation to start. You need discipline to start, and starting often generates motivation. The compound effect of small disciplines. Discipline doesn't typically produce dramatic results immediately. This is why people abandon it. They expect their discipline to be rewarded quickly and proportionally. They're disciplined for 2 weeks and wonder why they're not transformed. They maintain their routine for a month and question whether it's working.
Discipline compounds. The effects are exponential, not linear, but exponential growth looks frustratingly flat at the beginning. You're putting in consistent effort and seeing minimal results. This phase eliminates most people. They give up right before the curve starts to rise, right before the compound interest kicks in, right before their discipline begins producing outsized returns. Consider the mathematics. If you improve by 1% each day, you're not 1% better after 100 days. You're 2.7 times better. This is the power of compound discipline. Small, consistent improvements multiply into transformative results, but only if you maintain the discipline long enough for compounding to occur. This is why the discipline advantage is actually an advantage. Most people won't do it. They'll chase motivation, they'll look for shortcuts, they'll give up when results don't materialize immediately. You don't need to be exceptionally gifted, you just need to be exceptionally consistent. While others are starting and stopping and starting again, you're compounding. While others are waiting for motivation, you're taking action. While others are making excuses, you're making progress. The transformed person you're becoming isn't the result of occasional heroic discipline. It's the result of boring, consistent, unglamorous discipline applied daily for months or years. Show up when you don't feel like it. Do the work when it's not exciting. Maintain the standard when no one's watching. This is how transformation actually happens.
Discipline as self-respect. Here's the reframe that changes everything. Discipline isn't self-punishment. It's self-respect. Every time you do what you said you'd do, you're telling yourself that you're someone who keeps promises. Every time you maintain your standards despite difficulty, you're telling yourself that you matter. Every time you choose the disciplined path over the easy path, you're building evidence that you're the kind of person who does hard things. Undisciplined action is self-betrayal. When you consistently break promises to yourself, you learn that your commitments mean nothing. When you regularly choose comfort over growth, you learn that your goals aren't important. When you perpetually take the easy path, you learn that you're not capable of the hard path. This is devastating to your identity. Discipline, properly understood, is how you build trust with yourself. It's how you prove to yourself that you're capable, that your word matters, that you're worthy of the transformation you seek. Each disciplined action is a brick in the foundation of your transformed identity. Each undisciplined action removes a brick. The victory isn't in the specific action. The victory is in becoming someone who takes disciplined action. That version of you can accomplish virtually anything because you've demonstrated to yourself that temporary discomfort doesn't control you, that circumstances don't dictate your behavior, that you're the author of your own transformation.
This is the discipline advantage. Not that life becomes easy, but that you become capable. Not that challenges disappear, but that you develop the capacity to meet them. Not that you never want to quit, but that you continue anyway. This capacity, built through countless small acts of discipline, is what separates those who transform from those who merely wish they could. Your transformation is waiting on the other side of consistent discipline. Not perfect discipline, consistent discipline. Not superhuman discipline, human discipline, applied daily, despite difficulty, regardless of feeling. That's the path. That's the advantage. That's how victory comes.
Chapter 6. The Energy Equation: Managing Your Resources. Transformation isn't just about knowing what to do. You can have the perfect plan, unshakable discipline, and crystal-clear goals, yet still find yourself stuck, spinning your wheels, making no meaningful progress. The missing variable isn't information or intention, it's energy. You're trying to fuel a transformation with an empty tank, wondering why the vehicle won't move. Most people treat their energy like it's infinite, like they can indefinitely draw from reserves that somehow magically replenish themselves. They pile commitment upon commitment, say yes to every request, burn through their days without regard for their limits, then collapse in exhaustion, wondering what went wrong. They blame their discipline, their motivation, their character, never recognizing that they're simply trying to operate a system without adequate fuel. Here's what separates sustainable transformation from dramatic burnout. Understanding that you're not managing tasks or time, you're managing energy. Everything you do either generates energy or consumes it. Every person you interact with either drains you or energizes you. Every environment you occupy either depletes your reserves or replenishes them. Until you master this equation, energy in versus energy out, your transformation will remain frustratingly out of reach. The 4 energy currencies. Your total energy isn't a single pool. It's 4 distinct currencies, each requiring different management strategies. Physical energy is the foundation. Mental energy is your cognitive capacity. Emotional energy is your capacity to feel, process, and regulate. Spiritual energy is your sense of meaning and purpose. Most people focus exclusively on physical energy while wondering why they still feel depleted. Physical energy is the most obvious but least understood. It's not just about being tired or awake. It's about the quality of fuel you're providing your body and the recovery you're allowing it. You cannot maintain a transformation while subsisting on processed food, inadequate sleep, and zero movement. Your body isn't a machine that runs on willpower. It's a biological system that requires specific inputs to function optimally. The person who sleeps 5 hours, skips breakfast, sits all day, and fuels themselves with caffeine and sugar is operating at a massive energy deficit. They might white-knuckle their way through tasks, but they're doing so at tremendous cost. Their physical energy is so depleted that it's dragging down their mental, emotional, and spiritual energy too. They're trying to transform while actively sabotaging their energy foundation. Mental energy is your capacity for focus, decision-making, and cognitive work. It depletes rapidly and recovers slowly. Every decision you make, every problem you solve, every distraction you resist costs mental energy. This is why you can wake up physically rested but feel mentally exhausted by noon. You've burned through your mental energy reserves without replenishing them. Emotional energy is perhaps the most underestimated. Difficult conversations, toxic relationships, unprocessed grief, suppressed anger, chronic anxiety, all of these consume enormous amounts of energy. You can be physically healthy and mentally sharp, but emotionally depleted, and that depletion will sabotage every other area of your transformation. You cannot outwork emotional exhaustion. Spiritual energy is what makes the effort feel worthwhile. It's the deep sense that what you're doing matters, that your transformation serves something beyond immediate gratification. When spiritual energy is high, physical exhaustion feels bearable because the work has meaning. When spiritual energy is depleted, even small tasks feel pointless. This is why people can work exhausting jobs they love and feel energized, but feel drained by easy jobs that lack meaning. Energy auditing, knowing your drains and gains. Most people have no idea what's actually draining their energy. They feel exhausted but can't pinpoint why. They assume it's just life, just how things are, just their lot to bear. This passive acceptance guarantees continued depletion. You cannot manage what you don't measure. Conduct a rigorous energy audit. For 1 week, track not just what you do, but how each activity affects your energy across all 4 dimensions. After every significant activity, rate your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy on a scale of 1 to 10. Write it down. You're looking for patterns. You'll discover surprising things. That friend you feel obligated to see, they're an energy vampire, leaving you consistently depleted after every interaction. That project you're forcing yourself to care about, it's draining your spiritual energy, making everything else harder. That habit of checking email first thing in the morning, it's fragmenting your mental energy before you've even started your important work. That skipped lunch to save time, it's costing you hours of productive energy in the afternoon. The audit reveals hidden subsidies, too, activities that generate more energy than they consume. Maybe it's a specific type of exercise that leaves you energized rather than exhausted. Maybe it's cooking, or woodworking, or playing music. Maybe it's time with a particular person who makes you feel alive. Maybe it's work that aligns perfectly with your strengths and values. These are your energy generators, and most people neglect them because they seem like luxuries rather than necessities. They're not luxuries, they're strategic investments. The hour you spend doing something that quadruples your energy creates more capacity for transformation than the hour you spend grinding through depleting work. This is counterintuitive, which is why most people get it backwards. They eliminate the energizing activities to make room for more depleting ones, then wonder why they're perpetually exhausted. Strategic energy allocation. Once you understand your energy landscape, you can allocate strategically. This isn't about having more time. It's about having more energy during the time you have. It's about matching your highest energy states with your highest value activities. Your peak energy windows are precious and limited. For most people, there are 2 to 4 hours per day when all 4 energy currencies are at their highest. This is when your body feels good, your mind is sharp, your emotions are stable, and your sense of purpose is strong. What are you doing during these hours? If you're spending your peak energy on low-value activities, scrolling social media, attending pointless meetings, responding to non-urgent emails, you're committing strategic malpractice. Your transformation work must happen during peak energy windows, not the leftover scraps of energy at the end of the day, not when you're already depleted, during your best hours. This requires ruthless prioritization and boundary setting. You might need to protect your morning hours from meetings. You might need to batch administrative tasks for low energy periods. You might need to say no to requests that would colonize your peak energy time. These aren't selfish choices, they're survival choices. Your transformation depends on having energy when you need it most. Consider energy matching, pairing task intensity with energy availability. High energy states are for creative work, strategic thinking, difficult conversations, and challenging physical activity. Medium energy states are for routine work, planning, and moderate exercise. Low energy states are for administrative tasks, light reading, and passive learning. Stop trying to do high-intensity work during low energy states. It's inefficient and demoralizing. Recovery as strategy, not weakness. The transformation culture narrative celebrates grinding, hustling, and relentless forward motion. Rest is portrayed as something you'll do after you've achieved your goals, as a reward for success, rather than a requirement for it. This is catastrophic advice that produces burnout far more often than breakthrough. Your body doesn't build muscle during exercise. It builds muscle during recovery after exercise. The workout creates the stimulus. The rest creates the adaptation. Without adequate recovery, you're just accumulating damage. The same principle applies to every form of transformation. Growth doesn't happen during exertion. It happens during recovery from exertion. Strategic recovery isn't collapse. It's not waiting until you're completely depleted and then taking a desperate 3-day break where you do nothing but sleep and eat and feel guilty. Strategic recovery is built into your rhythm, preventing depletion rather than responding to it. It's daily micro-recoveries, weekly restorations, and seasonal regeneration. Daily micro-recoveries are short breaks that prevent energy hemorrhaging. Every 90 minutes, step away from focused work for 10 minutes. Not to scroll your phone, that's not recovery, that's different depletion. To breathe, move, look at something distant, let your mind wander. These breaks seem like lost productivity, but actually increase total output by maintaining energy levels. Weekly restoration means one day where you significantly reduce demands on your energy systems. Not necessarily doing nothing, but doing different things. If your week depletes mental energy, your restoration day emphasizes physical activity and emotional connection. If your week depletes physical energy, your restoration day emphasizes rest and cognitive stimulation. The goal is rebalancing, not just stopping. The energy environment. Your physical environment has a profound impact on your energy that most people completely overlook. The lighting, temperature, noise level, visual complexity, and even color palette of your spaces are either supporting your energy or sabotaging it. Small environmental changes can create dramatic energy shifts. Natural light is perhaps the single most powerful environmental energy factor. Your circadian rhythm, which governs sleep quality, hormone regulation, and energy patterns, is primarily calibrated by light exposure. Working in artificially lit spaces all day, especially with overhead fluorescent lighting, disrupts this rhythm and depletes energy. Get morning sunlight within an hour of waking. Work near windows when possible. Use warm-toned lighting in the evening. Temperature affects performance more than you realize. Most people keep their environments too warm, which promotes drowsiness and mental fog. Slightly cool environments, around 67 to 68 degrees, promote alertness and cognitive function. This is why you think more clearly on a crisp morning than in a stuffy afternoon room. Visual complexity and clutter create constant low-level demands on your mental energy. Your brain is continuously processing every object in your visual field, determining whether it requires attention. A cluttered desk isn't just aesthetically unpleasant, it's cognitively expensive. Simplifying your visual environment reclaims mental energy for what matters. Noise is another hidden drain. Even when you think you've tuned it out, your brain is still processing ambient sound. This continuous processing depletes energy. Silence, when possible, is restorative. When silence isn't available, consistent background noise like brown noise or instrumental music is less depleting than variable noise like conversation or traffic. Your environment either says, "This is a place for focused work," or "This is a place for distraction and comfort." Most people try to do transformation work in environments optimized for relaxation, then wonder why they struggle. Create spaces that support the energy states you need. Your workout space should energize you. Your sleep space should calm you. Your workspace should focus you. Stop expecting one environment to serve all purposes. The social energy factor. People are the most significant variable in your energy equation. Some people leave you feeling energized, inspired, and capable. Others leave you feeling drained, diminished, and defeated. Most relationships fall somewhere in between, but understanding the net energy impact of your social connections is critical to sustainable transformation. Energy vampires are real. These are people who consistently take more energy than they give. Every interaction leaves you depleted. They might be negative, dramatic, self-absorbed, or simply mismatched with your values and communication style. They're not necessarily bad people, but they're expensive to your energy budget. If you're spending significant time with energy vampires, you're fighting your transformation with a handicap. Energy generators are equally real. These are people who make you feel more alive. Conversations with them leave you inspired and energized. Their presence elevates your mood and motivation. They believe in you, challenge you appropriately, and celebrate your progress. Time with energy generators isn't a luxury, it's fuel. Audit your relationships with the same rigor you audit your activities. After spending time with each person in your life, do you feel more energized or more depleted? This isn't about whether you like them, it's about the energy transaction. Some people you like are still net drains. Some people who challenge you are net generators. You don't need to eliminate every energy-draining relationship, but you need to be strategic about them. Limit time with energy vampires. Don't schedule important transformation work after interactions that deplete you. Compensate for necessary depleting interactions with intentional energy restoration. And critically, increase time with energy generators. Their impact compounds. Also examine the groups and communities you're part of. Are they supporting your transformation or undermining it? A community of people pursuing similar transformations provides energy through shared purpose, accountability, and celebration. A community that ridicules your efforts, tempts you back toward old patterns, or simply doesn't understand what you're doing becomes an energy drain that can sink your entire transformation. The energy multiplier, alignment. Here's the secret that explains why some people seem to have unlimited energy while others are perpetually exhausted, despite doing less. Alignment. When your daily actions align with your deepest values and most meaningful goals, energy flows naturally. When they don't, everything requires tremendous effort. This is why you can work an exhausting 12-hour day on a project you care deeply about and feel energized, but feel completely drained after 2 hours doing work that feels meaningless. The effort isn't the primary variable. The alignment is. Misalignment is the most expensive energy drain of all. If your transformation feels like constant pushing against resistance, the problem might not be your discipline or strategy. It might be that you're pursuing the wrong transformation. You're trying to become someone you don't actually want to be, or achieve something that doesn't align with your core values. This creates perpetual internal conflict, and conflict consumes enormous energy. Ask yourself honestly, does this transformation energize me when I think about the destination? Does working toward it feel difficult but meaningful, or difficult and meaningless? Am I pursuing this because I genuinely want it, or because I think I should want it? If you're transforming yourself to meet someone else's expectations or society's standards rather than your own deepest desires, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back. When you find true alignment, when your transformation resonates with who you authentically are and who you genuinely want to become, energy becomes available that you didn't know you had. Obstacles that seemed insurmountable become manageable. Discipline that felt punishing becomes natural. The path that appeared impossibly difficult becomes challenging but doable. Your transformation isn't separate from your life. It's woven into it. And your energy isn't something you have to manufacture through willpower and caffeine. It's something you can cultivate through strategic management of your physical state, your mental load, your emotional well-being, your sense of purpose, your environment, and your relationships. Master the energy equation, and your transformation becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Chapter 7. The Company You Keep, Curating Your Environment. You are not a self-contained unit operating in isolation. You're a node in a network, constantly transmitting and receiving signals, being shaped by forces you barely notice. The people around you, the spaces you occupy, the media you consume, the conversations you participate in, all of it is either pulling you toward your transformed self or anchoring you to who you've always been. Most people fail at transformation not because they lack commitment, but because they're trying to change while surrounded by everything that made them who they currently are. Consider the power of atmospheric pressure. You don't feel it because it's constant, pressing equally from all directions with a force of roughly 14 pounds per square inch. Your body has adapted completely. You don't notice it until it changes dramatically at high altitude or underwater, and suddenly you're aware of how much that invisible force was shaping your experience all along. Your social environment works the same way. The attitudes, habits, beliefs, and behaviors of the people around you create an invisible pressure that shapes you constantly. You adapt to match. You don't notice it happening because it's gradual and pervasive. But just like atmospheric pressure, when it changes, everything changes. Place yourself in a different social environment, and you become a different person, not through force of will, but through adaptation to new atmospheric conditions. This is why transformation through willpower alone is so exhausting. You're trying to swim against a current so strong that you don't even recognize it as a current. You think you're fighting yourself, but you're actually fighting your entire environment. The transformed version of yourself isn't impossible. It's just impossible in your current environment. The social contagion effect. Obesity is contagious, not through viruses or genetics, but through social networks. Research shows that if your friend becomes obese, your likelihood of becoming obese increases by 57%. If your friend's friend becomes obese, someone you might not even know, your likelihood still increases by 20%. This isn't about shared meals or similar genetics. It's about normalized behaviors and shifted standards. The same mechanism applies to virtually everything. Happiness is contagious. Depression is contagious. Ambition is contagious. Mediocrity is contagious. The people around you are constantly broadcasting behavioral signals, and you're constantly receiving and integrating them. This isn't conscious mimicry, it's automatic social calibration. If you're surrounded by people who never exercise, exercise will feel weird and unnatural to you. Not because you lack discipline, but because your social environment is constantly signaling that exercise isn't what people like us do. If you're surrounded by people who read constantly, reading will feel natural. If you're surrounded by people who complain perpetually, you'll find yourself complaining. If you're surrounded by people who solve problems, you'll develop problem-solving tendencies. This isn't judgment about anyone's character. It's recognition of how human psychology actually works. You become like the people you spend time with, not because you're weak, but because you're human. Your brain is designed to learn social norms from your immediate environment and conform to them. This mechanism kept our ancestors alive by helping them integrate into their tribes. Today, it either supports your transformation or suffocates it. The question isn't whether you'll be influenced. You will be. The question is whether you're being strategic about who influences you. Most people aren't. They inherit their social circle from circumstance, family, proximity, history, and then wonder why transformation feels impossible while constantly marinating in an environment that reinforces their current state. The 5 people theory reconsidered. You've probably heard the claim that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's repeated so often it's become a cliché, but like most clichés, it contains a kernel of truth wrapped in oversimplification. You're not averaging personalities or income levels. You're absorbing behavioral norms, identity standards, and possibility models. The five people theory fails because it focuses on quantity, time spent, rather than quality of influence. 5 hours with a mentor who expands your thinking might impact you more than 50 hours with coworkers who reinforce limiting beliefs. One conversation with someone living the transformation you seek might rewire your sense of what's possible more than months with people who think your goals are unrealistic. Additionally, your 5 people aren't static. They should change as you transform. The people who were perfectly matched for who you were 3 years ago might be mismatched for who you're becoming. Holding on to relationships out of loyalty or nostalgia while they actively impede your transformation isn't noble. It's self-sabotage. Reframe the 5 people theory. You're shaped by the people who have the most influence on your identity, regardless of time spent. This includes people you've never met, authors, podcast hosts, online creators whose ideas you consume regularly. It includes historical figures whose stories shape your understanding of what's possible. It includes the version of yourself you're becoming, which should be a present voice in your decision-making. Audit your actual influences. Whose opinions do you care about most? Whose approval do you seek? Whose disapproval do you fear? Whose lifestyle do you admire? Whose advice do you follow? These are your real 5 people, and they might look different from who you spend the most time with. Understanding who actually influences you is the first step toward being strategic about that influence. Strategic social curation. If you're serious about transformation, you need to become ruthless about curating your social environment. This doesn't mean being cruel or burning bridges unnecessarily. It means being honest about which relationships support your transformation and which undermine it, then adjusting accordingly. Start with categorizing your relationships into 3 groups. Transformational relationships are with people who are ahead of you on a similar path, who model the transformation you seek, who challenge you to grow, and who believe in your capacity to change. These relationships should be prioritized and protected, even if they require significant effort or feel slightly uncomfortable because you're reaching upward. They're worth it. Supportive relationships are with people who aren't necessarily on your path, but genuinely support your transformation. They celebrate your progress, respect your boundaries, and don't sabotage your efforts. These relationships can continue, but shouldn't dominate your time and energy. Destructive relationships are with people who actively undermine your transformation, whether through mockery, temptation, guilt-tripping, or simply embodying everything you're trying to move away from. These relationships need boundaries at minimum and distance or termination in extreme cases. Most people avoid this categorization because it feels judgmental or disloyal. But consider, if you were an alcoholic getting sober, would you prioritize spending time with people who drink heavily and pressure you to join them? Everyone would understand that protecting your sobriety requires adjusting your social circle. Your transformation deserves the same protection. Some practical strategies for social curation. Reduce frequency of contact with people who drain your energy or undermine your goals. You don't need to announce this or create drama, just be less available. Let relationships naturally drift to a level that doesn't impede your transformation. Increase frequency with people who elevate you. Be deliberate about scheduling time with mentors, transformation allies, and people who model what you're trying to become. These relationships often don't happen accidentally. You have to initiate and maintain them. Join communities aligned with your transformation, whether it's a gym, a course, a group program, or an online community. Surrounding yourself with people pursuing similar goals creates automatic social support for your transformation. You stop being the weird one who's trying to change and become part of a group where change is normal. The physical environment effect. Your physical spaces are having a conversation with you constantly. They're either saying, "You're the kind of person who does this," or "You're not." A cluttered bedroom says you're not someone who has their life together. A well-organized workspace says you're someone who takes your work seriously. A kitchen stocked with whole foods says you're someone who values nutrition. A home without books says you're not someone who reads. These aren't just aesthetic choices, they're identity reinforcement mechanisms. Every time you look at your environment, you're receiving feedback about who you are. If that feedback conflicts with who you're trying to become, you're creating internal resistance that makes transformation harder. Consider someone trying to become a writer who has no dedicated writing space, no visible books, no paper or pens easily accessible. Their environment is constantly whispering, "You're not really a writer." Meanwhile, someone with a dedicated desk, shelves of books in their genre, and writing tools prominently displayed receives constant environmental reinforcement, "You're a writer." This is why transforming your environment can catalyze transformation more effectively than trying to transform yourself while keeping your environment the same. Your environment should reflect the person you're becoming, not the person you have been. Start with your primary spaces. Your bedroom should promote the sleep quality you need. Your workspace should eliminate distractions and facilitate focus. Your kitchen should make healthy eating easier than unhealthy eating. Your living room should encourage the activities you want to do more of and discourage those you want to do less of. If you want to read more, books should be more visible and accessible than your TV remote. If you want to exercise, workout equipment should be present and ready, not buried in a closet. If you want to cook, your kitchen should be organized and stocked. If you want to meditate, you need a dedicated space that invites the practice. This isn't about having money for fancy setups. It's about intentional arrangement of what you already have. Move furniture to create the space you need. Remove objects that support old patterns. Add objects that support new ones. Your environment should be doing some of the work of your transformation automatically. The information diet. You're not just influenced by the people you interact with directly. You're massively influenced by the media you consume, the news you read, the social media you scroll, the podcasts you listen to, the videos you watch. All of it is shaping your thoughts, beliefs, and identity. Most people have absolutely no strategy for their information consumption. They passively absorb whatever the algorithm serves them, whatever appears in their feed, whatever their friends share. This is like eating whatever someone puts in front of you without regard for nutrition. You wouldn't fuel your body that way. Why fuel your mind that way? Audit your information diet with the same rigor you'd audit your food diet. What are you consuming daily? What thoughts and beliefs is that content reinforcing? Is it moving you toward your transformation or away from it? Is it expanding your sense of possibility or reinforcing limitations? Is it energizing or depleting? Most social media consumption is net negative for transformation. It's designed to be addictive, to trigger comparison, to fragment attention, to replace deep thinking with shallow reaction. If your transformation requires focus, creativity, or sustained effort, social media is actively working against you. The person who scrolls for an hour daily while trying to transform is like someone trying to run a marathon while carrying a heavy backpack. Technically possible, but unnecessarily difficult. Curate your information inputs deliberately. Unfollow accounts that make you feel bad, distracted, or envious. Follow people who inspire you, teach you, or model your desired transformation. Set strict limits on passive consumption and increase active learning. Replace scrolling with reading. Replace outrage content with educational content. Replace comparison triggers with inspiration sources. Consider implementing media-free periods. Morning routines without checking news or social media. Evening hours dedicated to reading or conversation instead of screens. Weekly days where you significantly reduce information input and increase information processing. Your brain needs time to integrate what it's already consumed. Constant input without integration creates mental clutter. The environmental friction and flow. Every environment creates friction for some behaviors and flow for others. Your home probably makes it very easy to watch TV and very hard to do pull-ups. Your office probably makes it easy to attend meetings and hard to do deep, focused work. Your car probably makes it easy to eat fast food and hard to eat fresh vegetables. Most transformations fail because people try to force new behaviors in environments optimized for old behaviors. They're fighting against the grain constantly. The person trying to eat healthy while their kitchen is full of junk food is swimming upstream. The person trying to focus while their workspace is full of distractions is pushing a boulder uphill. Transformation becomes dramatically easier when you redesign your environment to create friction for undesired behaviors and flow for desired ones. Want to watch less TV? Unplug it and put the remote in another room. That 30 seconds of friction to retrieve and reconnect it will prevent hundreds of hours of mindless viewing. Want to exercise more? Sleep in your workout clothes. That removal of friction will get you moving more reliably than any amount of motivation. Want to eat better? Keep junk food out of your home entirely. The friction of having to leave your house and go to a store creates a decision point where your prefrontal cortex can override your impulse. Want to read more? Put your phone in another room and keep a book on your nightstand. The book has less friction than retrieving your phone. This principle applies to everything. Identify your desired behaviors and make them the path of least resistance. Identify your undesired behaviors and add friction. This isn't willpower, it's design. You're not becoming more disciplined, you're becoming better at arranging your environment so discipline isn't as necessary. The identity environment. Perhaps the most subtle but powerful environmental factor is the identity your surroundings reflect back to you. Walk into a gym, and you're immediately in an environment that says people here care about fitness. Walk into a library, and you're in an environment that says people here value learning. These aren't just buildings, they're identity contexts that temporarily reshape how you think about yourself. You can create these identity contexts intentionally. If you're trying to become a writer, create a space that looks like a writer's space, even if you're not yet a professional writer. If you're trying to become an entrepreneur, surround yourself with the books, tools, and symbols of entrepreneurship. If you're trying to become healthy, create a home environment that looks like a healthy person's home. This isn't fake it till you make it delusion. It's environmental identity priming. Your environment is constantly answering the question, who am I? If the answer your environment provides matches your transformation goal, you'll naturally begin behaving in ways consistent with that identity. If the answer conflicts with your goal, you'll experience constant identity dissonance. Think about dress codes. When you put on professional clothing, you behave more professionally. Not because the clothes change your character, but because they prime a professional identity. When you wear workout clothes, you're more likely to exercise. When you're in a space that reflects your transformed identity, you're more likely to act in ways consistent with that identity. Create spaces that answer, who am I, with, I'm the transformed version of myself. Not eventually, now. Your environment should stop reinforcing who you've been and start reinforcing who you're becoming. The courage to change your context. Here's the hard truth. Meaningful transformation often requires changing your context in ways that feel disloyal, scary, or extreme. Moving to a new city where nobody knows the old version of you, leaving a friend group that reinforces old patterns, quitting a job that conflicts with your values, ending a relationship that's preventing your growth. These changes feel dramatic because they are, but sometimes environmental change is the only way to create the space for personal change. Sometimes you can't become who you need to become while staying where you are. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is recognize that your current environment, however comfortable or familiar, is incompatible with your transformation. This doesn't mean recklessness. It means honest assessment. If you've been trying to transform for months or years without success, and you've addressed your discipline, your systems, your mindset, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's your environment. Maybe you're perfectly capable of transformation, just not in your current context. The transformed version of you exists in a different environment, different people, different spaces, different inputs. You can try to drag your current environment with you into your transformation, or you can have the courage to step into an environment where your transformation is natural. One path is exhausting, the other is inevitable. Your transformation isn't happening in isolation, it's happening in context. Master the context, and the transformation follows. Chapter 8. The Long Game: Sustaining Transformation Over Time. Most transformation stories end at the wrong place. They climax at the moment of achievement, the weight lost, the business launched, the habit formed, and fade to black with the implication that everything remains perfect forever after. This narrative is comforting and completely misleading. The truth that nobody wants to hear: reaching your goal is often easier than staying there. The skills that get you to transformation are different from the skills that keep you transformed. Consider the statistics. Roughly 80% of people who lose significant weight regain it within 5 years. Most businesses that survive their first year fail within their first 5. The majority of people who quit smoking eventually start again. New Year's resolutions typically collapse by February. The pattern is unmistakable. Humans are reasonably good at short-term change and remarkably bad at long-term sustainability. This isn't because people lack commitment or discipline, it's because they treat transformation as a project with an end point, rather than a lifestyle with no finish line. They sprint to the goal, then try to coast on their arrival. They assume that reaching the transformed state means the work is done. It doesn't. It means different work begins, the work of sustainability, which is subtler, less exciting, and infinitely more important than the work of initial change. The long game isn't about motivation. It's about architecture. It's about building systems so robust that they function even when you're tired, distracted, or going through difficulty. It's about creating a version of your transformed self that doesn't require constant vigilance to maintain. It's about recognizing that transformation isn't a destination you reach and then relax at. It's a new baseline you establish and then defend. The arrival fallacy. There's a psychological trap waiting at the finish line of every transformation goal. You imagine that achieving the goal will fundamentally change how you feel, that crossing that threshold will bring lasting satisfaction and relief. Then you arrive, experience a brief spike of accomplishment, and discover something disturbing. You feel pretty much the same. You're still you, just in different circumstances. This is the arrival fallacy. The mistaken belief that reaching a goal will produce permanent happiness or fulfillment. It's why lottery winners return to baseline happiness within months. It's why people who achieve their dream job still experience stress and dissatisfaction. It's why someone who reaches their goal weight doesn't suddenly feel complete and satisfied forever. The fallacy has two devastating effects on sustainability. First, the disappointment of arrival often triggers abandonment. You worked so hard to get here, and it doesn't feel the way you imagined, so what was the point? Why maintain something that didn't deliver what it promised? This disappointment becomes permission to slide backward. Second, arrival removes the organizing principle that structured your behavior. You were the person trying to lose weight, and that identity drove your daily decisions. Now you're the person who lost weight, which sounds similar but functions differently. The goal that pulled you forward is gone. The challenge that engaged you is resolved. The clear target that made decisions simple has disappeared. Without it, decision-making becomes muddled and motivation evaporates. The antidote to arrival fallacy is understanding that transformation goals aren't endpoints, they're waypoints. Losing 30 pounds isn't the goal, it's the entry point to the goal of living as a healthy person. Building a business isn't the goal, it's the entry point to the goal of sustaining and growing it. The real transformation isn't achieving the result, it's becoming the kind of person who maintains that result as their new normal. Reframe every transformation goal from reach X to become someone for whom X is baseline. This subtle shift changes everything. You're not trying to touch a finish line and then figure out what comes next. You're trying to establish a new floor that you never drop below. The work doesn't end at arrival. It shifts from building to maintenance, from achieving to sustaining, from extraordinary effort to consistent ordinary effort. The degradation curve. Everything degrades over time without maintenance. Physical fitness degrades without continued exercise. Knowledge degrades without continued practice. Relationships degrade without continued investment. Systems degrade without continued attention. This isn't pessimism, it's entropy. The natural state of things is to move toward disorder, and your transformation is no exception. Most people understand this intellectually but fail to account for it practically. They build something, then shift their attention to the next thing, assuming what they built will persist on its own. It won't. The moment you stop actively maintaining your transformation, it begins slowly reverting toward your previous state. The degradation isn't usually dramatic. You don't wake up one day having lost all your progress. It's a slow slide. You skip one workout, then another, then it's been 2 weeks. You eat well all week, then have a bad weekend, then realize those bad weekends are becoming a pattern. You maintain your morning routine for months, then travel disrupts it, and you never quite reestablish it. Each small degradation feels manageable, even justified. The accumulation over months becomes transformation reversal. Understanding the degradation curve means building maintenance into your transformation from the beginning. You're not creating a temporary system to achieve a goal and then dismantling it. You're creating a permanent system that becomes part of how you operate. The routines, habits, and practices that got you to your transformed state aren't training wheels to be removed. They're the vehicle that keeps you moving. This requires a fundamental mindset shift. Instead of asking, "How long do I need to do this?" ask, "How can I make this sustainable indefinitely?" Instead of viewing maintenance as a burden, view it as the price of keeping what you've built. A gym membership isn't an expense you endure until you get fit and then cancel. It's an investment you maintain because fitness is now part of your identity. Build maintenance routines that are sustainable at your lowest energy levels, not just your highest. The test of a good maintenance system isn't whether you can maintain it when you're motivated, rested, and focused. It's whether you can maintain it when you're tired, stressed, and distracted. Because those conditions aren't occasional exceptions, they're regular occurrences. Your system must function in reality, not just in ideal conditions. The plateau problem. Every transformation journey includes plateaus, periods where effort continues but visible progress stops. You're doing everything right, maintaining all your practices, but the results have stalled. You're no longer losing weight despite consistent diet and exercise. You're no longer improving at your skill despite regular practice. You're no longer seeing business growth despite sustained effort. Plateaus are where most long-term transformations die. The initial phase provided constant visible progress, which fueled motivation and confirmed you were on the right path. The plateau removes that feedback. You're working just as hard but getting nothing in return. The natural conclusion feels obvious. It's not working anymore, so why continue? This conclusion is almost always wrong. Plateaus aren't evidence of failure, they're evidence of adaptation. Your body adapts to your exercise routine, making it more efficient and thus requiring less change. Your brain adapts to your learning practice, consolidating skills in ways that feel like stagnation but are actually integration. Your market adapts to your business approach, requiring new strategies to continue growth. Plateaus are the transformation equivalent of molting, an uncomfortable pause before the next phase of growth. The key to surviving plateaus is understanding that they're normal and temporary, not terminal. Progress isn't linear, it's punctuated. Periods of visible advancement alternate with periods of invisible consolidation. During plateaus, you're not failing to progress, you're building the foundation for the next leap forward, but only if you maintain your practice through the plateau. Sustaining effort during plateaus requires divorcing your commitment from visible results. This is psychologically difficult. Humans are wired to respond to feedback. When feedback stops, motivation evaporates. The solution is shifting your focus from outcome to process. You're not maintaining your practice because it's producing immediate results. You're maintaining it because you're the kind of person who maintains practices. The results will come, but they come to people who continue when results aren't visible. Additionally, plateaus often signal the need for variation. If your progress has genuinely stalled for months despite consistent effort, you might need to adjust your approach. Not abandon it, adjust it. Different exercise stimulus, different learning method, different business strategy. The goal remains constant, but the path to continued progress might require modification. Plateaus are diagnostic tools, showing you where your current approach has maximized its effectiveness and where evolution is needed. The Identity Maintenance Challenge. Your transformed self isn't just a set of behaviors, it's an identity. You're no longer someone trying to get healthy, but a healthy person. You're no longer aspiring entrepreneur, but business owner. These identity shifts are powerful because they make aligned behaviors feel natural rather than forced. But identity is also fragile, especially in its early stages. Every time you behave in ways inconsistent with your transformed identity, you're casting a vote against it. Miss workouts and you're voting, "I'm not really a fitness person." Break your business commitments and you're voting, "I'm not really professional." Slip back into old patterns and you're voting, "I'm still the old version of me." Enough of these votes and the transformed identity dissolves, leaving you back where you started but with added shame. Identity maintenance requires consistent identity-confirming actions. You don't need to be perfect. You need to ensure that the majority of your votes, your daily actions, support the identity you've built. This is why missing one workout is fine, but missing a week is dangerous. One miss is an exception that doesn't threaten identity. A week suggests pattern change that might indicate identity shift. Think of your transformed identity as a garden. You worked hard to plant it, cultivate it, and bring it to flourish. Now it exists, but it's not self-maintaining. Weeds, old patterns, limiting beliefs, environmental pressures constantly try to reclaim the space. Identity maintenance is the ongoing weeding required to keep your transformed identity healthy. It's not glamorous work. It doesn't produce the satisfaction of initial planting, but without it, the garden eventually returns to wild. Implement identity reinforcement practices, regular activities that remind you who you've become and why you value it. Maybe it's a weekly review where you note identity-confirming actions. Maybe it's visual reminders in your environment. Maybe it's community participation with others who share your transformed identity. Find what works, but understand that identity isn't self-sustaining. It requires active maintenance. Long-term transformation doesn't rest on a single practice. It rests on a stack of practices that reinforce each other, creating redundancy so that if one fails temporarily, others maintain the structure. This is why transformation built on willpower alone is so fragile. It's a single point of failure. The sustainability stack eliminates single points of failure. The foundation of the stack is routine, consistent behaviors that happen automatically without requiring decision-making. Your morning routine, your workout schedule, your meal patterns, your work practices. These routines form the bedrock because they function even when motivation is absent. They're just what you do. The next layer is environment, physical and social contexts that make transformed behaviors easier and default behaviors harder. Your curated spaces, your supportive relationships, your information diet. This layer provides passive support, reducing the discipline required to maintain transformation. The third layer is systems, processes that catch you when you slip and guide you back on track. Your tracking mechanisms, your accountability structures, your review practices. This layer provides active correction, ensuring temporary deviations don't become permanent regression. The fourth layer is community, people who share your transformed identity and normalize your new behaviors. Your workout partners, your mastermind group, your online communities. This layer provides social reinforcement, making transformation feel normal rather than exceptional. The top layer is vision, your clear understanding of why this transformation matters and who you're becoming. Your values alignment, your long-term goals, your sense of purpose. This layer provides meaning, making the daily maintenance feel worthwhile even when it's difficult. Each layer supports the others. Strong routine reduces environment pressure. Good environment reduces system demands. Effective systems protect community value. Engaged community reinforces vision. Clear vision strengthens routine commitment. The stack is resilient because it's redundant. You can have bad days on individual layers without the entire structure collapsing. Build your stack intentionally. Don't rely on single practices or single sources of motivation. Create multiple, mutually reinforcing practices that together make your transformation nearly inevitable. This is how you move from fragile change to robust transformation. The flexibility paradox. Sustainability requires an uncomfortable balance, consistency in principles combined with flexibility in execution. Most people get this backwards. They're flexible about their principles, constantly negotiating with themselves about whether today is really a day they need to maintain their standards, while being rigid about execution, insisting there's only one right way to do things, and if that way isn't available, they do nothing. The sustainable approach inverts this. Be rigid about principles, flexible about execution. The principle might be, I'm someone who exercises regularly. That's non-negotiable. But the execution can flex dramatically. Sometimes it's a full gym workout. Sometimes it's a home bodyweight circuit. Sometimes it's just a long walk. The principle remains constant, but the expression adapts to circumstances. This flexibility prevents the all-or-nothing thinking that destroys sustainability. If you can only maintain your transformation through perfect execution, you'll fail the moment life becomes imperfect. And life always becomes imperfect. Travel, illness, work demands, family emergencies, global pandemics, circumstances that make your standard practices impossible will occur regularly. Your ability to maintain transformation through these circumstances determines whether you actually sustain it. Create multiple tiers of execution for your key practices. The ideal version for when conditions are optimal. The good enough version for when conditions are challenging. The absolute minimum version for when circumstances are terrible. All three versions honor the same principle, but they acknowledge reality. This tiering gives you options, which prevents the binary thinking of all or nothing that leads to nothing. The person who maintains their transformation long-term isn't the person who executes perfectly. It's the person who executes consistently at whatever level circumstances allow, never letting imperfect execution become an excuse for zero execution. They understand that maintaining transformation at 80% during difficult periods is infinitely more valuable than abandoning it entirely until conditions are perfect again. The forever mindset. The ultimate sustainability principle is this: if you can't imagine doing it forever, don't build your transformation on it. Temporary measures produce temporary results. If your transformation relies on practices you're white-knuckling your way through, counting down the days until you can stop, you haven't transformed, you've just delayed regression. This is why extreme diets fail. You lose weight eating in ways you hate, then return to eating in ways you enjoy, then regain the weight. The method was inherently unsustainable. This is why motivation-dependent practices fail. You maintain them while fired up, then abandon them when motivation wanes. The foundation was inherently unstable. The forever mindset asks, can I genuinely see myself doing this in 5 years, 10 years, for the rest of my life? If the answer is no, you need a different approach. This doesn't mean everything must be effortless or enjoyable. It means nothing should be torturous or unsustainable. You're looking for practices that might be challenging, but are rewarding enough, aligned enough, and manageable enough to maintain indefinitely. This often requires moderating initial ambition. The person who wants to transform their fitness might dream of training 2 hours daily. But can they sustain that forever? Probably not. So instead of building their transformation on unsustainable intensity, they build it on sustainable consistency, perhaps 45 minutes most days. Less dramatic, but infinitely more sustainable. The forever mindset also means building satisfaction into your transformed life, not deferring it until some imagined future. Your transformation shouldn't feel like punishment you endure for the promise of eventual reward. It should feel like a life you want to live now that happens to be moving you toward your goals. If you're miserable during your transformation, you'll either quit or arrive at your goal still miserable. Neither outcome is victory. Transformation isn't a temporary project. It's a permanent upgrade. The long game means building that upgrade to last, not just to impress. It means choosing sustainability over intensity, consistency over perfection, maintainable over optimal. Because the transformation that lasts is always better than the transformation that dazzles briefly, then disappears. The transformed version of you isn't waiting at some finish line. It's emerging through the daily practice of sustainable transformation. And that transformation, properly built, has no end. It just becomes who you are. Your identity is also heavily influenced by labels others have assigned you. The shy one, the smart one, the athletic one, the creative one. These labels, once accepted, become self-fulfilling prophecies. You behave in ways consistent with the label, which generates evidence supporting the label, which strengthens your identification with it. The cycle repeats until the label feels like fundamental truth rather than arbitrary assignment. The liberating and terrifying truth is this: you're not any fixed thing. You're a process, constantly becoming. The person you were 5 years ago is different from who you are now, and both are different from who you'll be 5 years from now. Identity is fluid, but we treat it as fixed. We defend our current identity as if it's our true self that must be protected, when often it's a limited self that should be transcended. The first step in identity transformation is questioning the identity you currently hold. Which beliefs about yourself are actually true, and which are just stories you've repeated so many times they feel true? Which limitations are real, and which are just comfortable excuses that protect you from the discomfort of growth? Which aspects of your identity serve the person you're becoming, and which only serve the person you've been? The evidence-based identity. Identity isn't changed through affirmation or wishful thinking. You can't just declare, "I'm a successful entrepreneur," while taking no entrepreneurial action and expect your brain to accept it. Your identity is built on evidence. Your brain looks at your behavior, notices patterns, and draws conclusions about who you are. If you consistently behave like someone who procrastinates, your brain concludes, "I'm a procrastinator." If you consistently behave like someone who follows through, your brain concludes, "I'm reliable." This is actually good news. It means you don't need to change your identity first and hope behavior follows. You can change behavior first and identity will follow. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Take enough votes in a particular direction and your brain recategorizes you. You're no longer someone trying to be disciplined. You're a disciplined person. The identity shift happens naturally through accumulated behavioral evidence. This is why small actions matter more than you think. When you make your bed, you're casting a vote for, "I'm the kind of person who keeps my environment organized." When you go to the gym, you're voting for, "I'm a person who values fitness." When you honor a commitment despite inconvenience, you're voting, "I'm someone whose word means something." Each individual vote is nearly meaningless. The pattern of votes determines your identity. The implications are profound. You don't need to overhaul your entire life simultaneously to shift your identity. You just need to start accumulating evidence for your desired identity. One workout makes you slightly more of an athletic person. One healthy meal makes you slightly more of a health-conscious person. One completed project makes you slightly more of a person who finishes what they start. The identity emerges from the evidence. This also means that every action either reinforces or undermines your desired identity. When you say you'll wake up early but hit snooze, you're gathering evidence that you're not the kind of person who keeps commitments to themselves. When you say you're a writer but don't write, you're gathering evidence against that identity. Your actions and your claimed identity need to align, or your brain will default to believing your actions over your claims. Build your new identity through micro-commitments that generate evidence. Don't try to immediately be the person you want to become. Try to take the actions that person would take, starting with the smallest possible version. The person who wants to become a reader doesn't need to immediately read an hour daily. They need to read 1 page daily and maintain that commitment. Each day they honor it, they're building evidence. I'm someone who reads consistently. The identity solidifies through repetition. The identity hierarchy. Not all identities are created equal. Some are fragile and context-dependent. I'm a good employee, or I'm someone who eats healthy. These identities are useful but vulnerable because they're tied to specific circumstances. Change jobs or face different food choices, and the identity can collapse. Deeper identities are more robust because they transcend specific contexts, like I'm someone who adds value wherever I am, or I'm someone who makes intentional choices about what I put in my body. The deepest level of identity is values-based rather than behavior-based. I'm a runner is less robust than I'm someone who prioritizes physical health and vitality. The first crumbles if injury prevents running. The second adapts. If running isn't possible, swimming or cycling or yoga becomes the expression. The underlying identity remains intact even when specific behaviors must change. This hierarchy also explains why some people maintain transformation through major life disruption, while others collapse at minor obstacles. The person whose identity is tied to specific behaviors, I am someone who goes to the gym at 6 a.m., loses their identity when circumstances prevent that specific behavior. The person whose identity is principle-based, I'm someone who moves my body regularly, simply finds new ways to honor the principle. Build identity at the principle level. What values or commitments underlie the behaviors you're trying to establish? Connect with those deeper principles and let specific behaviors be flexible expressions of them. Your identity becomes unshakable because it's not dependent on any single practice continuing forever. It's a commitment to principles that can be honored in countless ways. The transitional identity crisis. The space between who you've been and who you're becoming is uncomfortable. You no longer fully identify with your old self. Those patterns feel wrong, like clothes that don't fit anymore. But you don't yet fully embody your new self. That identity still feels aspirational, like you're trying on a costume. You're in identity limbo, and it's deeply unsettling. This transitional identity crisis is normal and necessary, but most people don't expect it. They assume transformation will feel good, that shedding old patterns and adopting new ones will be liberating and exciting. Sometimes it is, but often it's disorienting and lonely. Your old social circle might not understand who you're becoming. Your new identity might not feel authentic yet. You're caught between two versions of yourself, fully belonging to neither. The crisis is compounded by external resistance. People who knew the old you will, consciously or unconsciously, pressure you to remain that person. They're comfortable with who you were. Your transformation disrupts your mental model of you, which creates cognitive dissonance they attempt to resolve by pulling you back to familiar patterns. You never used to be so serious about health. You've changed. Remember when you were fun? These comments aren't innocent observations. They're identity reinforcement attempts trying to restore you to the version they recognize. Understanding this phase is temporary makes it bearable. You're not losing yourself, you're finding yourself. The discomfort is the sensation of growth, of expanding beyond the boundaries you've previously accepted. The identity that's emerging is more authentic than the one you're leaving behind, even though the familiar one feels safer because it's known. Navigate the transitional crisis by acknowledging it rather than resisting it. Yes, this is uncomfortable. Yes, you're not quite sure who you are right now. Yes, some people are reacting negatively to your changes. All of this is normal. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something significant. Real transformation creates turbulence. Gliding smoothly from one identity to another without disruption isn't transformation, it's minor adjustment. Also recognize that you don't need to have your new identity perfectly figured out before you can inhabit it. Identity emerges through action, not planning. You're discovering who you're becoming by taking actions aligned with who you want to become, then noticing how that feels, then adjusting. It's iterative, not predetermined. The transitional phase is the workshop where your new identity is being forged. Trust the process, even when it's messy. The identity announcement question. One controversial question in transformation work: should you publicly announce your new identity, or should you keep it private until it's established? The research is mixed, and the right answer depends on your psychology and circumstances. Public announcement creates accountability and social commitment, which can strengthen adherence, but it also creates premature identity adoption. You receive credit for who you're claiming to be rather than who you've become through action, which can reduce motivation to actually do the work. The safer approach for most people: let your actions announce your identity. Don't declare you're a writer. Write consistently and let others notice. Don't announce you're an entrepreneur. Build your business and let the identity emerge from the evidence. This approach keeps you honest. You can't fake action as easily as you can fake announcement. Your identity becomes real because it's built on behavioral foundation rather than verbal claim. There are exceptions. In some contexts, public commitment accelerates transformation. Announcing, "I'm training for a marathon," creates social accountability that helps you actually train. Telling your family, "I'm vegetarian now," makes it easier to maintain that practice in social settings. The key is ensuring the announcement creates useful pressure rather than premature satisfaction. You want the announcement to make the identity more likely, not less. A useful middle path: share your identity with a small circle of people who will hold you accountable rather than just affirm you. These are people who will notice if your actions don't match your claims and will question the discrepancy. They're not cheerleaders applauding your announcement, they're partners observing your behavior. This creates the accountability benefit of public announcement without the pitfall of receiving credit before you've earned it. Ultimately, the strongest identities need no announcement. They're simply obvious from observation. When your identity is truly established, people notice without you telling them. They comment on it, they ask about it, they reference it when describing you to others. That's the goal, not to successfully convince people you're someone you claim to be, but to become someone they can't help but notice you are. The Identity Defense System. Once you've established your transformed identity, you'll face constant threats to it. Environments that pull you toward old patterns, relationships that reinforce old identities, circumstances that make new behaviors difficult. Your brain's own tendency to revert to familiar patterns under stress. Your transformed identity isn't automatically permanent. It requires active defense. Build tripwires, early warning systems that alert you when you're beginning to drift from your identity. These might be specific behaviors that you know are leading indicators of larger slide. Maybe missing 2 workouts in a week signals potential fitness identity erosion. Maybe spending money impulsively signals potential financial identity slide. Maybe skipping your morning routine signals potential discipline identity collapse. Identify your personal tripwires, and when you cross them, treat it as alarm requiring immediate corrective action. Create identity reinforcement practices, regular activities that remind you who you are and why it matters. This might be a weekly review where you assess whether your actions aligned with your identity. It might be spending time with people who embody similar identities. It might be teaching or mentoring others, which reinforces your own identity through helping others develop theirs. It might be physical reminders in your environment, objects, quotes, images that reflect your transformed identity. Also recognize that identity defense sometimes requires saying no to good opportunities that conflict with your identity. The healthy person turns down food they'd enjoy because eating it conflicts with who they are. The focused professional declines interesting projects because they'd fragment attention from their core identity. The financial steward passes on purchases they could afford because spending that way doesn't align with their values. These aren't deprivation, their integrity. You're honoring your identity over temporary impulses. Perhaps most importantly, recover quickly from identity-inconsistent behavior. You will occasionally act in ways that contradict your transformed identity. Everyone does. The question isn't whether this happens, it's how quickly you course correct. The person whose identity survives long-term isn't the person who never slips. It's the person who slips, acknowledges it, and immediately returns to identity-consistent behavior. One deviation doesn't threaten identity. A pattern of deviations without correction does. The compound identity effect. Just as behaviors compound, identities compound. Each identity you successfully establish makes the next one easier. The person who has transformed their fitness identity develops confidence, discipline, and proof that transformation is possible. These assets transfer to the next transformation. The person who has shifted from procrastinator to productive has built capability that applies to countless other domains. This is why small identity transformations are worth pursuing even when they don't seem directly related to your major goals. Becoming someone who makes their bed daily seems trivial, but the identity shift from someone who doesn't maintain standards to someone who does transfers broadly. Becoming someone who reads daily seems minor, but the identity of being a learner and someone who follows through on commitments has massive downstream effects. Your identity portfolio expands through accumulation. You don't abandon old identities when you add new ones. You integrate them into a more complex, capable self. You're not just a healthy person or a disciplined person or a creative person. You're someone who embodies multiple empowering identities that reinforce and amplify each other. The discipline from your fitness identity supports your professional identity. The creativity from your artistic identity enhances your problem-solving identity. The identities stack and strengthen each other. This is also why protecting your identities is crucial. Each erosion doesn't just affect that single identity, it threatens your entire identity portfolio. When you betray one identity through inconsistent behavior, you're demonstrating to yourself that identities are negotiable, that your claims about yourself can't be trusted, that who you say you are isn't necessarily who you actually are. This weakens all identities, not just the one you violated. Conversely, maintaining one identity under difficulty strengthens all identities. When you honor your commitment to exercise despite not wanting to, you're not just maintaining your fitness identity, you're reinforcing your identity as someone who keeps commitments, someone who does hard things, someone who maintains standards under adversity. That strengthened meta-identity supports all your specific identities. Chapter 10. Victory Redefined. Arriving Without Ending. The finish line is a lie, not because it doesn't exist, but because what you'll find there isn't what you imagine. You think crossing it will bring relief, satisfaction, a sense of completion. You imagine arriving at your transformed state and finally being able to relax, to enjoy what you've built, to declare the work finished. This fantasy keeps you moving forward through difficulty, but it's also setting you up for a reckoning that derails more transformations than any obstacle along the way. Victory, real, sustainable, meaningful victory, doesn't look like what culture has taught you to expect. It's not a dramatic moment of arrival followed by perpetual ease. It's not crossing a threshold into a promised land where struggle ceases. It's not finally becoming a finished product that requires no further development. These images of victory are comforting fictions that crumble the moment you actually achieve what you've been chasing. The person who reaches their goal weight and expects to feel permanently satisfied discovers they still have the same insecurities, just in a different body. The entrepreneur who builds their dream business finds that success creates new, more complex problems than failure ever did. The person who masters a skill realizes that mastery doesn't end learning. It deepens it, revealing layers of complexity they couldn't see from below. Victory, when you actually arrive at it, is not an ending. It's a transformation of the game you're playing. This is why the final lesson in transformation is perhaps the most important. Learning to redefine victory so that achieving it doesn't destroy you. The people who transform and stay transformed aren't those who successfully reach their goals and then coast. They're those who reach their goals and immediately understand that they've arrived at a new starting line. They've completed one chapter, not the entire story. They've solved one level of problems, which grants them access to different problems. They've become someone new, which means their relationship to victory itself must evolve. The victory paradox. The closer you get to your goal, the less it matters. This sounds contradictory, but it's one of the most consistent patterns in human achievement. The desperate urgency you felt at the beginning, the burning need for change, the crystal clear motivation, the intense focus on the outcome gradually dissolves as you make progress. By the time you're close to crossing your finish line, you've already become someone different. The person who achieves the goal is not the same person who set it. This creates a strange paradox. The version of you that desperately needed to lose weight has been replaced by someone who lives as a healthy person. The outcome you were chasing matters less because you've already received the real prize, the transformed identity. The goal was always a proxy for becoming someone different, and you've already become that person through the process of pursuing the goal. The actual arrival at the goal weight is almost anticlimactic because the meaningful transformation already happened. Understanding this paradox prevents the post-achievement depression that plagues so many people who reach their goals. You won't feel the way you imagine you'll feel at achievement because you've already experienced the real transformation incrementally along the way. The dramatic moment of arrival you've been fantasizing about can't deliver what you expect because the actual transformation was gradual, not sudden. The version of you that finally weighs your goal weight has been living as a healthy person for months. The moment of hitting the number is just confirmation of what's already true. This doesn't make goals useless. Goals are the organizing principle that structures your transformation. They're the target that focuses your effort, but they're not the source of fulfillment. The fulfillment comes from who you become while pursuing the goal, not from the moment of achieving it. Victory is the process, not the destination. By the time you arrive, you've already won. You just might not realize it. The practical implication: stop waiting for arrival to feel victorious. Start recognizing victory in the daily choices that align with your transformed identity. The victory is in showing up for the workout when you don't feel like it. The victory is in choosing the healthy meal when you want the indulgent one. The victory is in maintaining your practice through difficulty. Each of these moments is victory. Arrival is just documentation of accumulated victories, not the first moment of winning. Redefining the finish line. If the finish line isn't where victory lives, what is it? It's a marker of transition. It's the point where one phase of transformation ends and another begins. It's not the conclusion of your journey, it's the graduation from one level to the next. When you cross it, you're not done. You're different. And being different means different challenges, different opportunities, different versions of victory to pursue. Consider the person who completes their first marathon. The finish line is real and meaningful. They've accomplished something significant that required months of preparation and hours of sustained effort. But crossing that finish line doesn't make them a runner who no longer needs to run. It makes them a marathoner, which is a new identity with new possibilities. Now they can pursue faster times, longer distances, different terrain. The finish line didn't end their running journey, it transformed it. This is true for every transformation. Reaching your weight loss goal doesn't end your health journey, it shifts it from weight loss to maintenance, from building fitness to sustaining it, from establishing habits to evolving them. Building your business to profitability doesn't end your entrepreneurial journey, it shifts it from survival to growth, from proving the concept to scaling it, from doing everything yourself to building a team. Every finish line is simultaneously an ending and a beginning. Redefine your finish lines as transitions rather than terminations. You're not working toward the day when the work stops. You're working toward the day when the nature of the work changes. This reframe eliminates the disappointment of arrival. You're not expecting that crossing the finish line will bring relief from effort. You're expecting it will bring different effort, hopefully more aligned with your evolved identity and capabilities. This also means planning for the transition before you reach it. Don't wait until you've achieved your goal to figure out what comes next. As you approach your finish line, start asking, what does the next level look like? How does my practice need to evolve? What new challenges become available to someone at my new level? What does maintenance and continued growth look like from this new position? The people who thrive after achieving their goals are those who see the finish line coming and prepare for the transition rather than treating arrival as unexpected. The expanded definition of victory. Traditional victory is binary. You either achieved the goal or you didn't. You either lost the weight or you didn't. You either built the business or you didn't. You either wrote the book or you didn't. This binary thinking is useful for creating clear targets, but it's catastrophically incomplete as a measure of meaningful victory. It reduces the entire transformation journey to a single outcome, ignoring everything you became along the way. Expand your definition of victory to include process victories, not just outcome victories. Process victories are the accumulated evidence that you're becoming who you need to become, maintaining your practice through difficulty, recovering quickly from setbacks, making choices aligned with your values, building systems that work, demonstrating consistency over time. These victories are often invisible to others and unimpressive in isolation. Collectively, they're the substance of transformation. The person who loses 15 pounds instead of their goal of 30 didn't fail if they fundamentally transformed their relationship with food, established sustainable exercise habits, and became someone who makes health-conscious decisions. The outcome victory is incomplete, but the process victories are substantial. They've become someone different, which is the actual goal beneath the stated goal. The number was always a proxy for identity transformation. If the identity transformed more than the number, that's still victory. This isn't participation trophy thinking where everyone wins regardless of effort. It's recognition that transformation has multiple dimensions of success. Someone can hit their outcome goal but achieve it through unsustainable methods that guarantee reversal. That's not victory. It's delayed failure. Someone can fall short of their outcome goal but build robust systems and identity shifts that guarantee future success. That's not failure, it's victory in progress. Measure victory across multiple dimensions. Did you become more disciplined? Did you build sustainable systems? Did you develop new capabilities? Did you strengthen key relationships? Did you deepen self-knowledge? Did you prove to yourself that transformation is possible? Did you maintain integrity with your commitments? Did you grow in ways you didn't anticipate when you started? These questions reveal victories that pure outcome measurement misses. Victory as practice, not prize. The deepest reframe is this: victory isn't something you achieve once. It's something you practice continually. You don't arrive at victory and then possess it permanently. You practice victory daily through choices that align with your transformed identity. Each day you're either practicing victory or practicing defeat. There's no neutral ground, no maintenance mode where choices don't matter. Every action is either reinforcing or eroding your transformation. This makes victory both more demanding and more achievable than traditional definitions suggest. It's more demanding because you never get to stop. You don't work hard, achieve your goal, and then relax forever. You work hard, achieve your goal, and then maintain the practices that got you there indefinitely. It's more achievable because you don't need to wait for some distant moment of arrival to experience victory. You can practice victory today, right now, through your next choice. The person who maintains their goal weight for 20 years isn't someone who achieved victory 2 decades ago and coasted. They're someone who has practiced victory daily for 20 years. Thousands of choices to eat appropriately, to move regularly, to honor their transformed identity despite temptation or inconvenience. Each individual choice seems small. The pattern across decades is the victory. This is why process focus is superior to outcome focus for sustainable transformation. Outcomes are events. Processes are practices. You can't control whether you cross the finish line today. Too many variables outside your control. You can control whether you practice victory today through disciplined choices aligned with your goals. String enough daily victory practices together and outcomes tend to take care of themselves. Focus obsessively on outcomes while neglecting daily practice, and you'll likely achieve neither outcomes nor transformation. Shift your focus from reaching victory to living victoriously. You're not working toward some future moment when you can finally declare victory. You're practicing victory through the quality of your daily choices. When you make the disciplined choice, you're being victorious. When you maintain your standard under pressure, you're being victorious. When you honor your commitments to yourself, you're being victorious. The accumulated practice of being victorious eventually produces outcomes that look like victory to others, but you've been experiencing victory all along. The moving target. Here's what nobody tells you about achievement. The moment you reach your goal, if you're genuinely transformed, you'll likely set a new one. Not because you're dissatisfied or trapped in endless striving, but because growth has become part of your identity. The person you've become through transformation is someone who expands, who pursues challenges, who refuses to stagnate. Reaching your goal doesn't satisfy that person. It frees them to pursue more ambitious goals. The goalposts aren't moving because you failed to appreciate a rival. They're moving because a rival transformed you into someone capable of more, and capability without application feels like waste. The marathoner who completes their first race and immediately starts thinking about the next one isn't trapped in joyless ambition. They've discovered they're someone who loves the challenge, who thrives in preparation, who feels most alive while pursuing difficult goals. For that person, setting a new goal isn't rejection of what they've accomplished, it's expression of who they've become. The victory wasn't finishing the race, the victory was becoming someone who loves racing. This is healthy as long as you're moving the target because you want to, not because you think you should. The difference is crucial. Moving targets because you're genuinely excited about new challenges and drawn to expanded possibilities is growth. Moving targets because you think what you've achieved isn't good enough or because you're afraid of what happens if you stop striving is dysfunction. One comes from abundance, the other comes from scarcity. Check your motivation when you set new goals after achieving old ones. Are you pursuing the new goal because the pursuit itself is meaningful and aligned with your values, or are you pursuing it because you think you're supposed to keep achieving, because you don't know who you are without a goal, because you're afraid of being ordinary? The transformed person pursues new goals from wholeness, not from lack. They choose challenges because they're called to them, not because they're running from something. Victory and contentment. The ultimate paradox. You can be simultaneously content with who you are and committed to becoming more. These aren't contradictory states, they're complementary ones. Contentment doesn't mean you've stopped growing, it means you're not growing from a place of inadequacy. Commitment to growth doesn't mean you reject your current self, it means you honor your potential. Many people oscillate between two dysfunctional extremes: self-rejection that drives frantic transformation attempts that collapse into burnout, or complacency that settles for far less than they're capable of while calling it self-acceptance. Neither is healthy, neither is sustainable, neither produces genuine victory. The healthy state is contentment plus commitment, satisfaction with who you are combined with dedication to who you're becoming. This integration is what makes transformation sustainable. When you're driven primarily by self-rejection, I hate who I am, I need to become someone different, the transformation is fueled by pain. Pain is powerful but finite. Eventually, you exhaust the pain, or you achieve enough transformation that the pain dissipates and your motivation collapses. Transformation built on self-rejection often fails at victory because achieving the goal removes the pain that was driving the effort. When you're driven by contentment plus commitment, I appreciate who I am and I'm excited about who I'm becoming, the transformation is fueled by expansion. You're not running from inadequacy, you're walking toward possibility. This motivation is renewable because it's not dependent on pain. Achievement doesn't diminish it because you weren't driven by lack. You can arrive at your goal, appreciate what you've accomplished, and immediately feel drawn toward the next expression of your potential. Cultivate both simultaneously. Practice gratitude for who you are right now, the capabilities you've developed, the transformation you've achieved, the person you've become. Simultaneously, maintain commitment to continued growth, the potential you haven't yet realized, the capabilities you could develop, the person you're becoming. Hold both truths. You're enough exactly as you are, and you're capable of more. These aren't contradictions. They're the foundation of sustainable transformation. The victory you already have. Perhaps the most important reframe: you don't need to wait for achievement to experience victory. If you're engaged in meaningful transformation, showing up daily, making disciplined choices, maintaining your practices despite difficulty, becoming someone different from who you were, you're already victorious. The outcome hasn't arrived yet, but the victory is already present in your daily practice. This is the secret that sustains transformed people through plateaus, setbacks, and the inevitable periods where visible progress stops. They're not waiting for external validation or specific outcomes to confirm their victory. They recognize victory in their daily choices. They're proud of themselves for showing up, for maintaining their practice, for honoring their commitments. That pride isn't contingent on outcomes, it's based on integrity. Alignment between who they claim to be and how they actually behave. The person grinding through the difficult middle period of transformation, when initial excitement has faded and results aren't yet visible, is being victorious. Not eventually when they cross the finish line, right now, in the grinding. The victory is in the choice to continue. The victory is in the resilience. The victory is in maintaining standards when it would be so much easier not to. These are victories worth celebrating, even though they don't look impressive to external observers. Stop deferring your sense of victory until some future achievement. Start recognizing victory in present action. Did you honor your commitment today? Victory. Did you make the disciplined choice despite temptation? Victory. Did you maintain your practice despite difficulty? Victory. Did you show up as the person you're becoming even when it wasn't easy? Victory. You're being the person who will eventually achieve the outcome, which means you're already victorious. The outcome is just lagging confirmation of present reality. The infinite game. Traditional victory is finite. There's a clear endpoint, a moment of winning, a conclusion to the game. Sustainable transformation requires infinite game thinking. You're not playing to win once and be done. You're playing to keep playing, to continue growing, to perpetually become. The game doesn't end when you reach your goal. The game is designing a life where continuous becoming is the norm, not the exception. Conclusion. Your transformation awaits. You've reached the end of this book, but you haven't reached the end of anything that matters. These pages were never meant to be a destination. They're a map, and maps are only useful if you actually take the journey they describe. Everything you've read, every principle, every framework, every hard truth about transformation remains theoretical until you apply it to your life. The question now is simple and unavoidable. What will you do with what you know? You've learned that transformation begins with brutal honesty about who you currently are. You've discovered that motivation is unreliable and systems are everything. You've seen that failure isn't your enemy, but your teacher, and that discipline isn't punishment, but the foundation of freedom. You understand now that energy must be managed strategically, that your environment shapes you more than you shape it, and that sustainable transformation requires playing the long game rather than sprinting toward short-term wins. You know that the deepest transformation happens at the identity level, that you must become rather than merely do, and you've learned that victory isn't a moment of arrival, but a practice you engage in daily, a direction you move toward rather than a destination you reach and leave behind. But knowing isn't transforming. Reading isn't becoming. Understanding these principles intellectually while your life remains unchanged is perhaps more frustrating than never encountering them at all. Knowledge without application isn't wisdom, it's weight, and you've carried enough weight already. The fork in the road. You're standing at a fork in the road. One path is familiar. It's the path of good intentions without follow-through, of starting strong and fading quickly, of waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. It's the path of reading transformation content, feeling inspired temporarily, then returning to exactly who you were before. It's comfortable because it's known. It's also the path that leads back to the life you're trying to leave behind. The other path is different. It's uncomfortable and uncertain. It requires you to act before you feel ready, to commit before you feel confident, to start despite not having everything figured out. It demands that you choose one area of transformation and begin today. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not when circumstances improve, today. It asks you to take imperfect action rather than perfect inaction. It's the harder path, which is exactly why so few people take it, and why those who do transform their lives. You can't walk both paths. You must choose. And choosing through inaction, telling yourself you'll decide later, you'll start soon, you'll get serious eventually, is choosing the familiar path. The default is always to remain who you've been. Transformation requires active, deliberate choice followed by consistent action. It requires deciding right now that you're done being who you've been and ready to become who you're capable of being. Your first move. Don't try to implement everything in this book simultaneously. That's not ambition, it's self-sabotage disguised as enthusiasm. You can't overhaul your entire life at once. You'll overwhelm yourself, burn out within weeks, and add one more failure to the collection of abandoned transformation attempts. Instead, choose one area, one specific transformation you're genuinely committed to pursuing. Not the one you think you should pursue, or the one that would impress others, the one that resonates most deeply with who you want to become. Maybe it's your health, maybe it's your career, maybe it's a specific skill, a relationship, your financial situation, or your daily habits. Choose the transformation that matters most to you right now. Then make your first move today. Not a dramatic, life-altering move, a small, concrete action that begins accumulating evidence for your transformed identity. If you're transforming your health, maybe it's taking a 15-minute walk. If you're building a business, maybe it's outlining your first offer. If you're becoming a writer, maybe it's writing 200 words. The specific action matters less than the act of beginning. Your first move doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be real. It needs to happen today, creating momentum that makes the second move easier, which creates more momentum that makes the third move easier still. Transformation doesn't begin with a perfect plan. It begins with an imperfect action that breaks the pattern of inaction. The Transformation Contract. Before you close this book, make a contract with yourself. Not a vague commitment or a hopeful intention, but a specific, concrete agreement between the person you are now and the person you're becoming. Write down your answer to these questions. What specific transformation am I committing to? What evidence will demonstrate that I'm becoming this transformed version of myself? What is my first action, and when exactly will I take it? What system will I build to sustain this transformation beyond initial motivation? How will I handle the inevitable obstacles and setbacks? Who will I become if I honor this commitment for the next 6 months? Be specific. Vague commitments produce vague results. I want to be healthier isn't a commitment, it's a wish. I'm becoming someone who exercises 4 times weekly and eats meals I prepare at home at least 5 days per week is a commitment. It's specific enough to act on, clear enough to track, and concrete enough to build systems around. Then sign it. Literally put your name on your commitment. This might feel silly or performative, but it's psychologically powerful. You're creating a formal agreement with yourself, acknowledging that your word matters, that commitments to yourself are as binding as commitments to others. This contract isn't for anyone else's benefit. It's for yours. Keep this contract visible. Return to it when motivation fades, when discipline wavers, when you're tempted to abandon your transformation. It will remind you of who you decided to become and why you made that decision. It will reconnect you to your purpose when circumstances disconnect you from it. The loneliness and community of transformation. Be honest with yourself about what's ahead. Transformation is often lonely. The people who knew the old you might not understand or support the new you. Your old social circles might feel mismatched with your new priorities. The routines and environments that were comfortable will become uncomfortable as you outgrow them. You'll face periods where you feel isolated, where nobody around you seems to understand what you're trying to do or why it matters. This loneliness is normal. It's the gap between who you've been and who you're becoming, between the life you're leaving and the life you're building. It's temporary, but it's real, and you need to be prepared for it rather than surprised by it. Many transformations fail not because the person couldn't do the work, but because they couldn't handle the isolation that sometimes accompanies it. But you're not actually alone. Millions of people are engaged in their own transformation journeys right now. They're facing similar challenges, experiencing similar doubts, demonstrating similar courage. You might not know them personally yet, but they exist. Seek them out. Find communities, online or in person, of people pursuing similar transformations. Connect with people who are slightly ahead of you on the path and can show you what's possible. Become that person for others who are slightly behind you. Transformation is individual work, but it's sustained through community. Find your people, the ones who understand why you're doing this, who celebrate your progress without jealousy, who challenge you without judgment, who remind you of your potential when you forget it. These relationships will become part of your transformation infrastructure, supporting you when your own resolve weakens. The permission you're waiting for. You might be waiting for permission to begin, permission from someone who believes in you, permission from circumstances that feel more favorable, permission from a version of yourself that feels more capable. You're waiting to feel ready, to feel confident, to feel like the kind of person who successfully transforms their life.